Later this morning, President Trump will deliver a speech to the 80th United Nations General Assembly. He arrived in New York City for the event last night. According to the White House, the president will talk about the renewal of American strength around the world, touting his leadership during the first 8 months in office. He's also expected to take part in several high-stakes meetings, holding discussions with the leaders of Ukraine, Argentina, and the European Union, as well as a separate summit with the heads of several Arab countries. Officials tell Axios the president will present them with a proposal to end the war in Gaza. The UN comes against the backdrop of Jimmy Kimmel Live being back on ABC's airwaves tonight. It comes nearly 1 week after the network suspended the late-night host amid threats of regulatory action from the FCC chair over Kimmel's comments about the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Disney, which owns ABC, announced the return in a statement yesterday, writing, quote, "Last Wednesday, we made the decision to suspend production on the show to avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country. It's a decision we made because we felt some of the comments were ill-timed and thus insensitive. We've spent the last days having thoughtful conversations with Jimmy, and after those conversations, we reached the decision to return the show on Tuesday." Some households, however, may still not see that show. Sinclair, which operates more than 30 ABC affiliates across the U.S., says it will carry news programming instead of Kimmel's return, but discussions with ABC are ongoing. Nexstar, the other major ABC affiliate owner that preempted the talk show last week, has not yet said what it plans to do. This reversal from ABC comes after days of pushback from protesters, politicians, and performers. Yesterday, just before the announcement was made, more than 400 celebrities signed a letter saying this is a dark moment for freedom of speech in our nation. Several Republican lawmakers also spoke out against the FCC's pressure on ABC. Among them, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, calling it absolutely inappropriate, and Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, calling it dangerous as hell. Meanwhile, FCC Chairman Brendan Carr is attempting to clarify his controversial comments about Kimmel, denying that he threatened to revoke the broadcast licenses of ABC affiliates unless the network fired the late-night host. Here's what Carr said last week, followed by his new explanation yesterday.
You know, when you look at the conduct that has taken place by Jimmy Kimmel, it appears to be some of the sickest conduct possible. Frankly, when you see stuff like this, I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to change conduct, to take action, frankly, on Kimmel, or, you know, there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead. A very reasonable, minimal step that can be taken. I mean, obviously, look, there's calls for Kimmel to be fired. I think, you know, you could certainly see a path forward for suspension over this. And again, you know, the FCC is going to have remedies that we could look at.
A lot of Democrats out there that are engaged in a campaign of projection and distortion. And distortion is they're completely misrepresenting the work of the FCC and what we've been doing. I saw there was a letter from some Senate Democrats that said the FCC threatened to revoke the license of Disney and ABC if they didn't fire Jimmy Kimmel, and that did not happen in any way, shape, or form. And what I spoke about last week was that when concerns are raised about news distortion, there's an easy way for parties to address that and work that out. And in the main, that takes place between local television stations that are licensed by the FCC and what we call national programmers like Disney. They work that out, and there doesn't need to be any involvement of the FCC. Now, if they don't, there's a way that's not as easy, which is someone can file a complaint at the FCC, and then the FCC, by law, as set up by Congress, has to adjudicate that complaint. And what I've been very clear in the context of the Kimmel episode is the FCC, and myself in particular, have expressed no view on the ultimate merits had something like that been filed.
A lot to get to this morning. National political reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Ken Thomas, joining us on a number of topics. Always great to have you here. I want to start right there with what we see from the FCC chairman clearly making a reversal here, and ABC making a reversal of their own, saying that the suspension is over for Kimmel, that he's coming back on the air tonight. Where do you think that the pressure on both sides came from, right? Why do you see the FCC chairman reversing course on his language that was pretty clear in the we can do this the easy way or we can do this the hard way. I think everyone heard what he was saying there. So where does that reversal come from, and what pressure do you think ABC was facing?
Well, I think Rand Paul and Ted Cruz speaking out about this had an impact. I mean, the Cruz comments about, comparing this almost to Goodfellas certainly resonated with the public. Cruz is a former Supreme Court clerk, free speech advocate. So I think that certainly had an impact. But, there's certainly pressure from the left here. But, the genie is really out of the bottle. Whether there was a direct threat or not, there was certainly a strong suggestion that the FCC was going to do work, as he put it. So I think this is one of those hard things that it's very difficult to really pull back. And it's clear that the president supports Brendan Carr here. So, it's just hard to imagine that, people would act differently based on, the circumstances.
Especially given the number of media reporters who were reaching out to Carr in the aftermath of this decision, and he's sending them emojis, clearly defiant in his posture. What do you imagine the Trump reaction is going to be?
Right, of course. I mean, this became one of the biggest stories on the planet. And so it's hard, I think, for, regulators to be viewed as going soft now, or reverse course. I mean, I think the message was sent, and I think broadcasters are going to, have to take this into consideration now.
Yeah, I think clearly, especially even as this story was coming together, we were talking about all of the different cross currents for places like Nexstar, who's trying to do their merger, like ABC, who's trying to do various business deals that are going to require DOJ approval. The politics and the substance of potential mergers and acquisitions is always so inextricably linked here. So we'll certainly be watching Kimmel tonight. That's going to be, I think, must-see TV. Absolutely. The other thing we're going to be watching, though many, many hours earlier, is going to be happening at the UN in Midtown Manhattan. How is the White House previewing what the president's remarks are going to be at a time where he's tried to position himself as this diplomatic broker on a number of different fronts that have really remained in a stalemate? Yeah,
we don't know a lot about the speech, but he's going to, as they put it, project American strength. I think Gaza is certainly going to be the undercurrent here. You have a number of American allies who are supporting Palestinian statehood along the sidelines of the meeting. While that's mostly a symbolic move, it's still something that is counter to where America is right now. And we saw, the president last week in London, not get drawn into much of a fight with Keir Starmer over this. They obviously have differences on Palestinian statehood. It'll be very interesting to see if the president in his speech goes light on that topic as well, knowing that there are a number of allies who have different views. And he's also in this position where he is very interested in winning the Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah. He talks about the work that he has done to curtail wars. He's trying to deal with the Ukraine issue. He's going to be meeting with Zelensky. So the tone will be very interesting to watch. He's often, butted heads with the UN over the years, but this year might be different. We'll have to see. Maybe it'll be different. Probably not. But at the same time, he is going to, I think, carve a very interesting space with the way that he talks about those conflicts and the way that he is at odds with leaders like Macron and like Starmer on the issue of Gaza and Palestinian statehood, among other topics.